Hi, my name is Karen and I'm an educator here in the Greenbelt, and we are continuing with our pond ecology study. And one of the things that we do when we study a pond or a wetland is we check the actual water. So the physical and chemical properties of the water are important just as much as the flora and the fauna that we're finding around our pond. So later on we're going to bring some water samples up to our classroom and we're going to do some chemical testing. But right now we're going to use some tools to test the turbidity of the water, or the clarity of the water. And that gives us an idea of how much sediment is in that water, if it's clear or if it is full of mud. So we have something called a Secchi disc, right? Very contrasted colored disc, black and white, which is easy to see through the water. This is very similar to it. It's got the same pattern, the black and white pattern on the bottom. And I'm going to show you how we use both of these instruments. So this disc is really best used maybe if you're on a boat or something like that, where you can get close to the water and you can get to the middle of our pond. We do not have that today, so we're going to have to take our water test off our deck here. And I don't think we're going to be able to get too deep, but I'll show you how to do it. We're also pretty high up from the water, so it's not really easy to mark how far down we're going. But this is basically the idea. It's weighted, so it will sink to the bottom. And as you can see, it kind of disappears, but it's not disappearing all the way. It's only going a couple of feet down. And because we can't get to the middle of this pond, it's making it a little bit difficult to get a true reading of how turbid the water is. So we're going to try this out with our other tool, which is a tube that does the same thing, except for we can measure it much deeper. So Chris is over here. Our tube is filled with water, and as I said, there's the same black and white pattern on the bottom of that tube. And what we're going to do is we're going to look in the top and see if we can see that black and white pattern, right? And then Chris is going to release the water slowly, and when we can actually see that pattern, we're going to stop it and we're going to mark it. You can see there is a ruler on the side that will tell us how deep the turbidity goes. So we're going to check that out right now. Hi everyone, we're back up in our classroom and we are going to do our water testing today. So this is chemical testing of what is in our water. We have our water sample that we collected from the ponds, which we did take our temperature on. We took the temperature down there. We're taking the temperature again here, and we did record that. We also took the air temperature down below and we recorded that as well. Temperature does affect some of these tests, so it's important to have that recorded. We have 4 tests here. 2 of them are nutrient tests. So we have phosphate and nitrates. You can test for other nutrients. So nutrients are the things that we need in our body, just like plants need, which is what we're really testing for here. And those nutrients, like vitamins, right? If you have too much or too little, it can affect your health. Same thing with our ponds. We have dissolved oxygen here, which means how much oxygen is in our water, which again, if it's too much, even though oxygen is a good thing, too much is a bad thing. And then we have our pH, which I will go over. And pH is just the test for the acidity of the water. So I already did my nitrate, but I'm going to show you how to do the phosphate. So these tests are very simple tests. They are just little tablets that you will dissolve in a little test tube with the water, and it will cause a color change, which you can compare on these little charts. Now they're not the most accurate. They give you a general idea. You can do tests that are much more accurate if you're doing it on a higher level, but for our purposes, this is fine. So what I'm going to do is take a sample of our water, and I'm gonna fill it up to our, I believe, 10 millimeter line. I don't know if you guys can see that. There are different markings. So the nitrate test, you only need 5 milliliters. So it's important to read the instructions if you're to do this on your own. Okay, so just about, does not have to be perfect. And then we're gonna take one of our pills. Hopefully that won't spill. And just drop it in. Gonna cover it, make sure it's closed tight because we are gonna shake it around. So we're gonna do this, let it dissolve for about 5 minutes and let that color develop based on how much phosphate is in the water. Okay, so we're gonna leave that here for now, and we're gonna go back to our other test. So this is our nitrate, and it looks sort of like there's nothing in there, but with this test, it's kind of cool. They give you a white background so you can compare. So I would say that is the lowest. It is probably under 5 ppm, and ppm stands for parts per million, and that's a standard measurement when you're doing tests like this. So we can see we don't have too many nitrates, which is not a bad thing. It's actually kind of a good thing. If you have high amounts of phosphates and nitrates, that might mean that there is some kind of pollution or waste in your water, and that is something you don't want. Another test here is our pH. So our pH is our level of acidity. Now 7 is pretty much neutral. So our blood and water and things like that are 7. And as you can see, our pond is about a 6, which is okay. So 6 might be a little bit acidic, but it's not so acidic that life can't live in it. If we were down to 4 or even 1 or 2, that is not, that would be almost like living in lemon juice. So obviously life can't live in that. If it was 10, that would be kind of like living in Drano. So you want a nice in the middle range, right, for your pond. If this is off, it's again an indicator that there's something wrong in that pond. Luckily ours is pretty much right there at 6 or 7. So that's a healthy pH for our pond. All right, and again, we're gonna write all this down so we can compare it. And then we have something called dissolved oxygen. Sometimes if our nutrients are out of hand, there will be too many plants growing, right? Because we have too much nutrients, and it will kind of kill off everything underneath it. And as those plants decay, it will use up the oxygen. So if we see that we have, it'll have too much oxygen, and then that's not a good thing either. So our oxygen level is, it's got a slight color to it. It's not 0. So I would say it's somewhere between 0 and 4 parts per million. Again, these are not 100% accurate. If it was up to like 8 or past and very dark, that's probably not a good thing. And if it was absolutely no oxygen, that's not a good thing either. So again, these tests are just basic indicators on how healthy our ponds are. So let's see, I'm gonna mix this up. I see it turning a little bit blue. I don't know if you guys can see that, but we haven't dissolved all the way yet. So excess nitrogen and phosphates and things like this can come from runoff from our sewers, right? Sometimes we have something called the sewer overflow, which is our waste from our households, and that gets into our waterway. So that's not a good thing when that happens. And these tests are a pretty clear indicator. I don't think this is developed all the way, but it will probably get slightly darker blue. But again, it's probably about 1 or 2 parts per million once this develops. And that's a good indicator of a healthy pond. So all of our tests here right now are good indicators that our pond is healthy, that there is no pollution in that pond, there's no waste in that pond, and things are happening the way they should. So when we compare this to the other surveys we've taken, like the plants and the animals, we can make a determination of the health of our pond.
As you can see, ponds, like all wetlands, are one of the most productive ecosystems on our planet. From bullhead lilies to painted turtles to the characteristics of water itself, All of these ecological components play a dynamic role in the health and well-being of our natural and biotic communities. Again, we want to thank you for taking part in this Pondland Ecology virtual field trip here in the Greenbelt. If you're interested in learning more about our natural communities and our parks here in the Greenbelt, please visit sigreenbelt.org.